and at times probably not potable and drinkable. And that's just the way it is. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. I know as much about mountaintop removal and mining. I know what happens with karst. I know what happens with the aquifers under the ground. And it gets in your water system. The Cumberland River is a pretty good source of water. But you got to have the flows, and you got to have the volumes, got to be clean. Think about what happens when you've got a system here, and if you had a main break right down Main Street, and you've got an 8-inch line out there, and it breaks right in the middle of January, February. The cost of going in there and taking the backhoe and digging that main up, replacing that main, putting in a valve, you got to then go back in there and re-chlorinate, pressure test it, turn it back on, let the water flow. That's going to cost you $15,000 right off the bat. And most cities don't have that money sitting over here in this Missouri County. And that's not your fault. You've just never had to do that. We as a publicly held company, we have to set aside reserves to do that because we have to take depreciation and amortization into our accounting every year. I don't think the municipality, you basically operate off of a cash type accounting system, and depreciation and amortization is not a big problem. The other reason that we have the ability to make improvements and do what needs to be done is that as a stockholder, our investors want a return on investment. And I'll tell you just as simple as I can. We have stockholders, we pay a dividend, we're for profit. If we can't make a profit, we're not going to do the deal. I mean, that's just the way it is. No use in being in business if you're not going to make a profit. Now, our profit margins are somewhat set because we're controlled by the Kentucky Public Service Commission, and in every state there's a regulatory commission that controls utilities. As investor-owned, the Public Service Commission approves what we can do when we want to raise rates. So we can't arbitrarily come into a system and just raise the rate and just say, okay, now pay for your water. I'll tell you, just give you an example. We just built a new plant in Lexington, 20 million gallon a day plant, and we ran 31 miles of 42-inch pipe. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen 42-inch pipe, but it's about that big. We ran 31 miles of that pipe. And we ran it through areas just like 119. And we built that new plant. We put in a 3 million gallon tank that holds that water, and we've got 4 booster pumps that push that water for the Kentucky River back into Lexington. The reason we did that provides a 20-year supply of water for 14 counties around Lexington. And 2 years ago, we had a shortage, a water supply shortage. We had a drought. This summer, we had a drought in bluegrass areas. Some of eastern Kentucky, Sayersville, Prestonsburg, some of those areas had a drought. And there wasn't enough water to go around, so you got to do what? You got to conserve that water. So we invest for the future. Now, we spent $164 million building that plant. And our rates went up, and they went up big time. They went up 27%. But what happens, we've made that investment, and that rate kind of levels off because we won't have a big investment to make in the future. So the difference in that and being in a municipality is you all can go build you a new plant. When you build that new plant, it's going to cost you about $3 to $3.5 million per million gallons a day of production. So if you build a 3 million gallon a day plant, it's going to cost you $10 million to build that water treatment plant. And your rates are going to go up. They're probably going to double. Our rates are $35 for 5,000 gallons of water. And they'll stay that way. We put a cost of living adjustment in there of 2%. And $35 for 5,000 gallons of water it is not a lot of money when you've got clean water, sustainable supply of water. When you've got a fire out in the city or the county and they turn on the hoses, you got PSI, they'll put the fire out. Water's a commodity. And if I don't tell you anything else today, I'll tell you that water is a commodity. And there's going to be a shortage of it, and it's going to cost more to get it from point A to point B. And it's people start arguing with me, what I usually ask them is, just what did you pay for gas before you came to the council meeting? You paid $3.09 a gallon, or $2.98 a gallon, and that's up 24% since back in June. And it's probably going to go up again. And you paid $1.29 for that Diet Coke. And if you go down here and buy a bottle of water, you'll pay anywhere from $1.29 to $1.59 for that bottle of water. And now, things are going up, costs are going up. I just heard your insurance representative tell you, insurance costs have gone up. If you want to make a comparison, we've got 7,000 employees across the United States. It costs us, on the average, our company pays about $1,100 a month insurance for each employee. My insurance for myself and my wife, $159 a month, and the company pays the rest. And it's about a $1,200 or $1,300 a month policy. So we're very fortunate when we go into communities and we buy their water and their wastewater systems, those employees transfer over into our system, and you know they see the benefits of doing that. Because and your police chief is exactly right. That vision and dental, it doesn't cover a lot. It'll cover one exam once a year, sometimes every other year, and you go to the dentist, it'll cover one cleaning and one exam a year. If you go buy glasses or contacts, they'll give you a 20% discount if you go to the right place. And enough about insurance. The reason that I came here tonight is I saw where the mayor came in and said to the city, I'm going to help cover this shortfall in here, which tells me you got a budget shortfall. And there's something out there in the business world called monetizing assets. And that's doing nothing more than converting your assets to money, into something of value. Get you out of arguing over whether to have an interconnect, over who's going to be on what board, how much your rates are going to be, do you have a buy-sell agreement, do you have a sale for resale agreement, what happens if you have a main break and you have to shut the water pressure off at that interconnect, what happens to Benham, what happens to Lincoln. You know, it's a business that we do every day, and we produce 1 billion gallons of water a day in our water treatment plants, and you'll see how many are in there. We've got them all over the United States. And wastewater is the same way. Wastewater is going to be the thing of the future because the EPA is getting ready to come out with another set of standards. And I can tell you that most class 2, 3 cities, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. Most cities aren't going to be able to meet those standards on wastewater. They'll have to do it over a 4 or 5 year period of time. And because there's stuff in that river that's going to have to be treated that they haven't made us treat before, including chromium and some other things that they find in the river. Big Sandy, I don't know how much you all know about the Big Sandy, but at one time it was the second dirtiest city in the United States east of the Mississippi River. And where did that come from? It came from natural runoff. So our laboratory, we have a laboratory over in St. Louis, and we do 1 million tests a year. Your water treatment plant and your wastewater treatment people test that water. I don't know if they send it to McCoy, they send it to a lab and it's tested. And it has to be managed, that test does, and then they have to report what they get as far as whether you've got any type of bacteria in that water, whether you've got high nitrogen content in the wastewater. And if you are over and above what the limits are, then the Division of Water can come in and actually fine you. Because we're a publicly held investor-owned company, we're under a whole lot more scrutiny than municipalities and counties are. And we have to meet a higher standard. So when we come into a city and we do water or wastewater there, we have to have a standard that's higher than that city has already had, because the DOW, Public Service Commission, to come in and do an automatic, what they call sanitary survey.